We're grateful to be here today with Scott Howell. This is our first time doing it on YouTube Live, so we're going to see how this goes. We're excited to have Scott from Iron Sights Podcast on with us today. He's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the fitness industry, but also has become a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the law enforcement side. Because as a civilian on his podcast, he's brought tons and tons of good guys from around the country on the law enforcement side to try to make law enforcement better. So we're grateful for him and him bringing both Bill and Rick and I all together to build the culture of law enforcement and make it a little bit better. So we're excited to have you on, Scott. So thanks for being here today, man.
Honored to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Cool.
Yeah, when we were talking about starting this new format, one of the first things we asked is who is it that we want to have on here that we feel is transformational to really launch this idea of having two opportunities to talk. One, doing it YouTube Live where we can record it. I should probably start that too, by the way. Where we can, that was fun. So, and we're still figuring out the technology. So some people are going to be seeing that. One of the things that we wanted is to have somebody who's transformational in the industry and has done a lot for us. It was through Scott that Jamie and Bill and I started talking to each other. I commonly refer to Scott as the consigliere of the law enforcement training and firearms training mafia, and does a great job bringing people together and introducing people to each other. So real quick to start off, I've published that we have 3 questions that we're generally framing around this entire conversation. The first one is based on your experience of having interviewed probably hundreds of people at this point.
Yeah.
What would you say in regards to firearms and law enforcement training is a common thread? Your perspective of law enforcement training as a civilian, gaps and such that you've seen, and what your thoughts are in general.
Hey, real quick, Rick, sorry, before we get into that, Rick or Scott, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, that might be helpful too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Who you are, why you're here, why we like you.
I don't know anything about that last question, but yeah, I think I've spent the majority of my life in the health and fitness space. I own a brick and mortar human performance coaching gym, if you want to call it that, out in San Jose, California. I've been doing, it's called Red Dot Fitness. We've been in business for a bit over 15 years now. Prior to that, I worked in the industry for other companies, a major corporation, where I had the opportunity to do all kinds of things, travel over the country, but primarily my job was building personal training programs on the business end, as well as training coaches and clients for a lot of time. So I learned a lot through that and ultimately opened my own business. So I'm out here doing my thing. It's January in the fitness business, so we're a bit busy at the moment, and I'm grateful for that. The podcast got started back in 2020. Again, being in California, being a gym owner, as most people know, gyms got shut down. Santa Clara County, which is the county that I reside in, was the hardest hit county from a restrictions perspective in the entire state. I don't think, if you weren't here, you can't really understand what that was really like, but it was tough. It was really tough. My gym doors were closed for a year by order of the health department. That didn't mean we weren't operating. Just meant my doors were closed and we had to work around some stuff. I had an outdoor gym going on. I was just trying to keep the thing together and try not to go bankrupt, and not lose my sanity. 2020, June of 2020 of that year, the George Floyd events happened across the country. We had a little bit of that here where I live. I always say this, I don't think it's very comparable to a lot of the other things that were happening around the country, but people were burning cities down, and that's what I was watching on TV. And when things kind of started getting riled up here, just in front of City Hall, which is about a mile and a half east of my business on the same street, law enforcement handled that pretty decisively. I'm grateful for that. I think most of the citizens are, at least the tax-paying ones, if you will. And they dispersed them pretty quick, and they started moving down in front of my business. And that was scary because I was seeing it on TV 2 blocks from my business is where I lived, and I didn't want to see my building get burned down. And again, in comparison, was nothing like what was happening in other places. But to me, that was a real concern because I was watching it happen, and I wasn't going to go bankrupt and watch my building be burned to the ground. So I went down with a couple of firearms, a little bit of food, and protected my business. This is really what it was. And what that really looked like was me sitting inside the front window. It's huge plate glass windows that face the main boulevard here, and was just really trying to be a deterrent and making eye contact with every person that that was kind of hanging around outside wearing hoodies and masks and things like that. And it worked, but at the same time, it was a realization that hey, look, if something went down here, what would I do? What am I even doing here? Like, I've got these tools, I've got a little bit of knowledge, I have very little practical application of any of this stuff. And in a sense, while I think it's a good thing because I was protecting my business, my employees, my family, my livelihood, it was also slightly irresponsible, in a sense, that I was very unprepared for that. And so that got me thinking, I should probably fix this problem. And in case this happens again, and we'd seen a lot of weird stuff for those 6 months. And so I started training, started like, where do you find out about this stuff? Like, what do I do? I need more combatives. I'd had some boxing, striking, jujitsu, grappling experience. So I started to explore that a little bit more. The firearms piece was something that was available to me in terms of local instruction and whatnot. So I started getting involved in that, and that led me down a whole lot of roads. But which is how the podcast got started, or where the podcast has gone. But in brief, I'd started the podcast to try to sell some online programs and products because my business was closed. So I was trying to expand my brand while also connecting with other people in the industry. Given my history, I had lots of connections, and I wanted to sort of collaborate and commiserate with my brothers and sisters, if you will, in the fitness industry, to find out what was working, how to fix this problem, that we were in terms of making money and making a living and continuing in the future. And it started there, and then as I was training, I was in this other genre, these other spaces, particularly in the firearm space. I was recognizing I had questions to answers that I wasn't getting on the firearms range, and some stuff looked really weird to me. Some stuff was way over my head. I didn't get it. Like, what is all this? What is this gear? Why is this guy doing this? Why is that guy doing that? Got online like everybody else does. You go to the social media, you try to find some answers there. And what I recognized, it very much looked like the fitness industry in terms of how information was being provided, how it was being messaged. And there were some people that were having some really good conversations, but I had questions. So I saw some good stuff. I saw some bad stuff. Some stuff was confused. There was a lot to navigate. So I started reaching out to folks, and some people that I thought were having the more intelligent, higher level, more process-based discussions. And I was surprised that they would have that discussion with me. It started online, then it started at courses. I would go out and see these folks, learned a ton, and it dawned on me, because I couldn't find this information otherwise, like in a social media format, I wonder if people would be interested in listening to these combos. And so we started recording those, and we started putting those out, and it's kind of turned into what it's turned into. It's been a fun road. That's kind of the short version of me.
When did you, who was your first firearms or your first law enforcement training guest? Do you remember?
Holy cow. Geez, man. I mean, we're over 200 episodes into this thing. That's a really great question, Rick. I should know the answer to that. But I actually don't. If I think back, I don't actually know, man. I have to go back and look. While everybody's been very impactful, I don't know that, but I'm sure it was somebody fairly local to me, and somebody that I brought on that to me was like that resource that I knew I could go to and have that conversation with, and put it out there. But man, that's a great question. I can't even remember. It's been 4 years, so it's been a lot
Crazy.
that's happened in that amount of time.
I'm going to go through, I've got your site up right now. I'm going to go through and see if I can find who that is.
Gosh, man. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I'm a little embarrassed I don't know the answer to that question.
Can't believe you haven't memorized every single 195 people you've had in your after
Well,
darks.
what
That's just your after
I could
darks.
tell you is this. I can tell you this. I can tell you that it's all been through these connection points and guys like you that have referred me to other people. And one of those major connection points was a guy I know you guys are familiar with, and that's Chris Curris, who actually saw an episode. His wife saw the episode of I interviewed the canine guys that train a lot of the law enforcement units, a lot of the canine units around my region, and they'd actually helped me train my dog. And it was a friend of mine I'd met on the range in my early experience, and I got really intrigued by what they were doing and how they were doing their work, because they're really good at it. And they were outside law enforcement, which is interesting because it's a tough barrier to break through. Anyway, I had the one guy on, Ricky from Spectrum Canine, good group of dudes, and we put his Malinois in the seat right across from me, put headphones on him, and took some B-roll of him in front of the mic, and we posted this thing on Instagram, and it went wild. And Chris's wife's also in law enforcement, and she happened to catch that on Instagram, and then kind of got into it and heard all the health and fitness stuff. And Chris was a strength and conditioning coach before going into law enforcement. And she said to him, she said, you might want to listen to this guy. He's kind of interesting. He's got an interesting take on stuff. So he listened, and then he reached out to me, and invited me out to train with him with the group he was working with at that time. And from there, he made some very, very critical connections for me, with some folks that really, I always go back to Chris, because he was one of the early ones, early in time, where would probably had one of the bigger impacts on the podcast and on me personally and professionally.
So I've found your number one podcast. It's somebody you may be familiar with. He has ridiculously great hair. It is number one, Who is Scott Howell?
Oh yeah,
Fitness, Friendship, and Failures with
that
Jackie.
was the first one. Yeah.
Number two was Ryan Reed.
Yeah, interesting. Health and fitness guy. People who know him, Jamie, he's out in your neck of woods. He's quite a character.
Yeah.
That connection was made by some guys who were helping me produce the podcast and do some marketing here at the gym at the time. But you had asked me specifically about law enforcement.
Yeah.
In the firearms industry, and that one's going to come later because we started all health and fitness, and it evolved.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of guests.
So
you want to go back to your original question though?
Yep.
Now that we've kind of dove in on who Scott is, recap that again real quick, Rick.
Yeah. What's the first question?
First question is, now that you have almost 200 episodes, you've interviewed people from firearms and law enforcement training, and what we do is specifically about law enforcement training solutions and stuff like that. What are the common threads that you're finding in a lot of the conversations you've had with law enforcement training and firearms training? And what gaps do you see? And what's your perspective of law enforcement training as a civilian, getting a deep dive and behind the scenes look that you're kind of unique in being able to have?
So I'm going to start with the last one and work my way back. I think is a good way to look at it. So when I first started this journey, I was just like anybody else that starts this journey. It's kind of like, and I'll do this a lot here because this is just what I know. It's kind of like going to the gym for the first time, starting a workout program. Like, it's very foreign. The first time you walk into the gym, there's the same walking onto the range. So like, do I have the right equipment? Am I wearing the right clothes? Like, do I have, these guys have all this cool guy stuff. Do I have the right things for this? And being introduced, I mean, I had some things, but I had a very limited perspective. And so in doing so, you're learning a lot, but you're also, for me, I'm a little bit of a nerd, and I was kind of studying the people around me. Like, what are they here? What's their skill level like? Maybe what's their background? How are they doing with the things that we're all being taught here? And in that, there were several law enforcement officers. And I learned some things very quickly. One, I had some expectations about their performance compared to mine. Like, I'm pretty new at this, right? They should be really good. They're cops, man. I mean, they carry these things for a living, right? So, but what I was surprised to find was, and wasn't everybody, but this was the larger majority, is that they were learning things for the first time that to me was kind of mind blowing. And that surprised me, and I wanted to know why. So, as I continue to go through these sessions and journeys and coursework and things like that, I started to pay closer attention to that. And here's what I can tell you. I think the common gaps are going back to some of the other parts of that question are clearly there were some confidence issues. I could see that right away. I mean, just go back to the gym, an comparison. There were some confidence issues there. You could see it. I mean, you could see it visibly, in their face, on their eyes, the way they're handling their equipment. Uh, they were clearly not as familiar with their equipment as they would have liked to be. Let's just put it that way. I don't want to fault people. I'm not bashing them, but I'd expected that they had a certain level of training that would have made them comfortable with this, and it was clear to me that they weren't. Secondly, I recognized really quickly that the discourse or terminology that was being used between people on the line and the instructors was not fully understood. There were gaps in that. There wasn't like a standard thing. Like some people called something one thing, some people called it another. Again, kind of relating it back to coaching and exercise, like we come up with these names of these workouts or these exercises, but they don't fully identify what the thing is that we're working on. So you're kind of left to kind of figure it out. And I was doing that. So I was recognizing that. And then obviously skill levels were vastly different. And sometimes, the younger police officer was way better than than the 5 or 10 year veteran at this. And that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I was like, well, there should be some ongoing training here. And, as I learned and found out, there was limitations there and that it's really up to the individual. And then I think the other thing that I learned on the instructor side of that, whether that was a law enforcement officer teaching or a civilian teaching, maybe it had law enforcement experience, retired or military experience, was there were some massive gaps in the delivery of information and their expectations of students and how all that was being delivered. I didn't think there was a very good connection being made with like why I was there and what I was trying to learn and what this other person was there and what they were trying to learn and how to make that all work together. What I heard was it sounded like a lot to me when I was a new trainer, like on the floor when I hit the trainer to, as a fresh like 22 or 23-year-old was I was just regurgitating information that somebody that I had read or somebody else had taught me, because to me that was the way. And so I saw a lot of that. And again, I think I was probably more aware of that at that time than maybe a lot of other people, because I had gone through that same thing myself. And that's where my questions lied. And that's why, again, going back to the reaching out and going, something's missing here. Like I might not know what it is right now, but I'm going to find out. And so there were some gaps in teaching the especially when you had 10 people on the line and they all have varying skill levels and coaches that were not very good. And again, these were law enforcement officers. Some of them were law enforcement officers, not very good at bridging those gaps. And I understood that. Like I really did understand that there's a challenge in that. But I was also doing private coaching sessions with some people and learning how they were doing that and what their process was. And the process to me was a little janky. Like, whoa, why are we spending so much time here when I don't even get this part of the concept, this part of the thing? I'm not doing this yet. It was like, my goal for you today is to get through all the information that I have to give to you, rather than moving at the pace that made the most sense for me.
Right.
So there's a lot there. It was really just like from the coaching sense and from the student sense, I don't think the students were fully developed in understanding what they should be getting, likely because the coach wasn't fully developed on how to ascertain or assess where the student is, how to get them to the next step, whatever that is, at the right pace for them, given where they are. Again, very much relatable to the fitness end of things for me.
Right. Right. And and that's so through firearms and just starting to see this disparity between the quality of shooters with law enforcement, that's what got you interested in starting to do law enforcement training podcasts.
Yeah, so I think the answer to that is that was kind of like an organic thing for me, in that, again, a lot of the training that I was seeing and a lot of the folks that are out there are or were former law enforcement or military. And they were retired military, right? And so I was very, again, keep in mind I was coming into this at like 2020, 2021 when the firearms training industry was exploding.
Right.
And some people were, there's a lot of media around this. And what struck me is like these ex-mil guys were teaching like more techniques or more tactics type stuff. And I was having a tough time kind of bringing all that together, going like, how does this really make sense? Like, and by the way, like, why is this guy that wear this funny hat in this branch of the service so mad at this guy over here that wore this hat, right, in this other branch of the service? Because they're kind of saying the same thing, but they're really angry with one another for whatever reason. Like that was, again, very relatable in the fitness industry, right? When you've got the guru of this and the guru of that, and there's a lot of controversy and whatever. So I think, again, going back, I think it was organically, like it just kind of came to that where law enforcement was very much involved with this, and they had some insights. But more, I think the more importantly is I was seeing stuff happen like in the world, and I was seeing stuff happen on my neighborhood, and I was dealing with things on a daily basis at a really rough time where they couldn't give me the answers in person to like things that were happening out there on the street. And I, that shocked me. I was like, why, wait, why can't we handle this? Why isn't that person getting arrested? Right. As an example, right. Why isn't that person, they just vandalized and burglarized my thing, my stuff or whatever it was. They're pooping on my front porch. Like, what is the deal? Like, why can't we do this? Well, and I wasn't getting clear answers. Like, let's just put it that way. And so again, going back to like, okay, there's problems here. Why are these problems exist? And so that certainly leads over to the firearms training side of things with law enforcement too. Like they can't even give me answers to the stuff that's happening on a daily basis. Now we're talking about other, more I guess pertinent things in terms of life saving and, life taking, and they seem to be a little bit disconnected. What's going on here? And so I think it was like kind of an organic fit with all the things that were happening along, to me in life or around me in life. Sorry, not to me, but around me in life. And then what I was seeing like in practice for these very specific things. And so in talking to these guys, they were interested in talking to me, and they were interested to answer the questions. And a lot of them were frustrated about what I just said. Like, yeah, it shouldn't be like that. Let me tell you why. And I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. Now I have more questions, right? And it just kind of evolved. There's not a formula for this. It was more just like me being inquisitive, curious, and really wanting to learn so that I could be better for my family, for myself, for my clients, my members, for my community, and try to be some type of a resource to like explain to people when they would come to me, hey, that person just vandalized your thing. What happened with that? Well, nothing happened with that. What are you talking about? Like, why is that? Why did that not happen? Like, why can't we work out today? Because they destroyed our stuff out here. Oh man, that person, did they arrest them? I'm like, no, actually they didn't.
Yeah.
Well, why not? That's a great question. Let me explain to you how the laws work around here, right? And what's really going on. And again, it just kind of evolved.
I think it's interesting, like you as an outsider to law enforcement coming in, speaking specifically to the training aspect, because that's a lot of what we talk about here is how do we develop better trainers? You recognize that there's a huge gap in the abilities of the instructors. And we see it all the time with every aspect of every instructor, every category of instructing, how many people just regurgitate over and over and over again the same thing. And I think that's one of our goals with this podcast or this live, whatever we're doing with it, is how do we develop those instructors to be able to be, like Scott and I have talked about this offline a lot, coaches instead of just someone regurgitating and reading off a PowerPoint. How do you teach them how to coach and not just regurgitate what they've heard 45 different times?
I think the simple answer is to that, and a lot of times because they've never actually been coached at anything, right? They've been instructed. And I think there's a difference between the two without going into the rabbit holes on that. But I think they got it from somebody that the information was regurgitated to, right? Who got it from somebody else who got it from somebody who had regurgitated that information to them, and so on and so forth. This is the way we do it this way because this is the way we've always done it. Like, I get that to some extent, but nobody ever really got coached. It's like, we got to go through this administrative tick list of things to make sure that you're quote unquote qualified at whatever you're doing. And then it's namaste, have a good day. And then they find themselves in a leadership position or in a coaching position. And so they've actually they might never ever had really good coaching. And then I started to learn about like how people actually get coaching positions in the law enforcement industry, right? Like, what is this based on? Right. And again, I was shocked in some levels to understand how somebody found themselves in the position that they were in as a firearms instructor in a law enforcement agency. I'm like, wait a second, you don't even do this thing. Like, but here you are now, quote unquote, teaching this thing. But really what you're doing is kind of handling it, that administrative task. That was a rough realization. But I now understand at a very deep level how it gets that way and why, in a lot of cases, why you guys are doing what you're doing.
Yeah. You know, one of the things you picked up, you said that there's no formula, but I think you actually hit on the formula itself. You have a natural curiosity. You have a natural curiosity. You want explanations. And so you've made the effort with humility, knowing that I could be wrong about something or suspending your own personal bias or preconceived notions. You've gone into it with an open mind, with an objective desire to learn. I think, if anything, that not only makes you a great podcaster, and one of the things the only reason I do every Sunday, I travel for about an hour and a half. I've started driving instead of riding my motorcycle just so I can listen to your podcasts, because that's one of the things that you bring to it, is that you're asking intelligent questions, because you can tell that you're asking from a genuine curiosity. You're not asking questions to just further along the conversation. You're actually doing a deep dive. And I think that that alone is probably one of the number one reasons that we have the other problem of bad instructors, is that is also a quality you have to have in instructors.
I believe that 100%.
If you don't have an instructor that's unwilling, if you don't have an instructor that has a natural curiosity, a desire to learn, and then have a voice to talk about, this is what I've learned and this is why I think it's important to do it this way, then you end up with the administrative thing that you have, which I honestly believe continues because we trust our previous instructors, never challenge it, so we just mimic what we've experienced. We don't do what we don't know we can't do.
Yeah, I think there's a piece of that, I mean, we could talk about the ego piece or whatever, but that self-examination. But I'm glad you're getting that from the show, and truly, like, I appreciate that, because that really is where it's coming from. Like, I do care, I am curious, and I think going back to like what I was seeing on the firearms range and some of the gaps that exist there, I think a lot of that exists because uh, it comes back to not or being afraid to be a white belt, right?
Yeah.
And walking into that situation knowing that you don't know a lot of things and being okay with that. And for me, you know, as I've aged up and spent so much time in the coaching industry, like, that's actually my favorite place to be. Like, if you can challenge me with something that I don't know and show me a better way to do something, dude, I am all in, and I will
Yeah.
ride that ride as long as you'll take me on it, right? And then at some point I'll recognize, like, maybe I've got what I need from here, and I'm not afraid to move on to the next thing and be a white belt all over again. Um,
Exactly.
you know, and value the experience and the things that I got, and not say because this other person is giving me the next level of what I need that you didn't do a good job, or that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. Like, there's levels to this, and I think, Jamie, that's kind of what we've talked about in the past. There's levels to this, and it takes time to develop the skill of coaching, as well as it does to the skill of shooting, if that's what we're talking about, or combatives, if that's what we're talking about. There's so many levels to every one of those things. And you got to be okay. Like, just because you know, you got your blue belt, congratulations. Like, you just reached the next point. You just got your black belt. From every black belt I've ever talked to, that's when I really started learning, right? Like, when I finally got that thing, like, now I'm really learning, right? Because you have all that stuff under your proverbial belt.
Yeah. Bill, you've been taking some studious notes there. Do you have anything to ask?
Yeah, I actually do. So Scott, it sounds like to me, you were saying that you think a lot of those times the guys that you were training with in law enforcement, they hadn't been coached before, so they didn't really know the difference between instruction and coaching.
Mhm.
And do you think that the fact that you were curious and had the open mind to learn, is we've established that pretty well, but do you think that you were able to observe that because of your experience being a coach and having those successes and failures in a coaching aspect? Because I've never been a strength and conditioning coach, but I've definitely worked with them before. And one thing I always noticed is that you can't regurgitate information in that space, because
every single client that comes in that door is different. So you have to be able to adapt. Whereas it seems like maybe this was your experience with that training, was that it was regurgitated one size fits all information. And in your brain, was it just like that didn't make sense with the const or the background that you had? Is that kind of accurate?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, you nailed it. And yes, the experience that I had, again, I had to go through that journey of becoming a coach myself. And I can remember vividly those stops along the way, those milestones of like, oh, I need to go back and actually apologize to every client I've trained for the last year, right?
Yeah.
Because this was wrong. Like, or man, I could have communicated this so much better or in such a different way. And so, like, while I was getting this, I want to be clear about this. Like, I wasn't going, this guy's an idiot. Like, he doesn't even know what he's doing. Like, I just recognized and respected, I think, that this person, this coach, and this student, for whatever the case is just at this stage in their journey. And everybody has to go through that. So, but absolutely, like being able to self-reflect, and just go back and go, like, I think I've been here before. Like, I get where this person is going. So it wasn't like I was walking away bitter or feeling unfulfilled. I was able to take something from every single person I've ever stood next to the line on, or the coach that I was in front of, or the instructor that I was in front of. And I think that's the mindset. I think that's a missing mindset and a gap that exists in law enforcement training. Is this guy can't teach me anything because he's not a cop. This guy can't teach me anything because he hasn't done this before. Or this guy can't teach me because I've been on for 15 years and he's been on for 3, or whatever the reason is. Like, I think that's a huge limiting factor in law enforcement training. And I don't think you guys would disagree with me. And at the same time, like, I think that's, as you start to work your way up the ranks of administration, how policy is made, how these training programs are designed, why they're not changing, why in some cases they are changing for the better, maybe for the worse, but for the better. I think it's all interrelated.
And off of that too, one thing that you said, which I wholeheartedly agree with, but maybe you can explain it better to the folks listening. But you said that you noticed that things weren't process focused or process based. And I think, at least in my experience with law enforcement training, is that it's very outcome focused and it's very regurgitated, and it's very
Results focused. Yeah.
and technique based, and very, like, in the Marine Corps we'd call it 100-level tasks, meaning like very individual tasks, not higher level understanding. So in your words, would you be able to explain like why that process based is more important to focus on than the outcome based?
Yeah, I think so. Like, if you're trying to find the 100% solution to a problem, I think you're going down the wrong path. Like, there's I've heard you guys talk about that. There's the way, whatever that is, and then there's a way. And I think that's dependent on so many things. Like, whatever thing you're going to do, like whatever outcome you're looking for, there's almost always more than 1 or 2 or 3 ways to skin that cat. And I think you have to give people what they're, instead of giving the answers to the test, you have to give them the pre-work and the foundationals and the fundamentals in order to get there. I don't think that's going to be news to anybody out there. However, and I think if I talk to some of these instructors that are doing this, they would get that. But what they don't recognize is the way they're presenting the information doesn't do that, right? It is very siloed, if you will, rather than looking at the like a holistic picture. So again, I'll make another, fitness related, kind of maybe analogy or a comparison in that. Look, I have this person and they want to build strength. Okay, well, I have to take a look. So we know, like, the way to do that, right, is to add loads to the body. Like, we give them some resistance training, right? They have to lift heavier stuff. They have to do it to a certain exertional level, right? A certain intensity level, and they have to do it for a certain amount of time to get there. Okay, that's general knowledge. But man, there are so many things in there based on the person that you're standing in front of that need to be identified, right? They need to be assessed. And then the way you do those things needs to be applied in a correct manner. And that's many different ways, depending again on many different factors in order to get there. I understand, again, standing a group of 12 people and you have 4 hours with them or whatever it is, that's a difficult task. It is a difficult task. It very much is. I understand at an agency level, trying to get 200, 300, 2,000 officers up to speed on this particular thing, that's a difficult task. But if all you're focused on is the task of doing that and not how to get there in the most effective, efficient ways, well, I think we're seeing that in spades at a lot of levels across that industry or that profession, how uh, dangerous, quite frankly, that can be.
Yeah, we're not emphasizing decision making as opposed to put in X, get Y, and you're done.
Yeah, it's like again, like you're trying to give them the answers to the test, right? And the test is going to look different every time. It's never going to look the same way every time. So, how do you provide them the tools to go through this assessment process of what's the right decision that I have to make here? And then I need to be able to recognize, was that the right or the wrong decision? What's my next move? Kind of thing.
Yeah. Nice.
Well, I think like relating it to fitness, like you have, I can go online and buy a program. It's going to tell me exactly what to do on that program. Or I can hire a coach to be like, okay, what do I need? And then everything gets tailored specifically to me. Law enforcement is the same way. We can give officers checkbox lists of do this, do this, do this on every traffic stop, or do this, do this, do this on every barricade. But every barricade is different. Every high risk traffic stop is different. So we have to be able to teach, like a good coach would, teach the officers how to process the information, have various outcomes that they want, and make their decision making based on what they want to have happen in that specific situation, rather than if you do this, this is going to happen, because that's never the way it happens in real life.
Yeah, I think you guys could relate to this. Like, who are the people that probably do that? I'm not gonna this will ruffle some feathers, but who are the people that have the most opportunity to figure that process out, right? And it's usually the guys like on special units, right? Let's talk about SWAT versus patrol. Like they're given resources and time, plus they have experience and knowledge that within that group of people that they're working those problems out with, right? So they can interact with one another, versus patrol guy who gets 2 hours of this, 4 hours of that, right? 2 more hours over here. We don't see that happen again for 2 more years. And then when the thing happens, whatever the thing is, they are required to draw back on that 2 hour experience they had of going through tick boxes, and they're supposed to have a healthy outcome to this, whatever that is, the desired outcome. I think it's pretty unrealistic. Like I think it's ridiculous to think like that, if I'm being honest.
And another point, relating back to fitness, is tailoring it to the individual person. A lot of instructors, you see these, it always kind of frustrates me when I see firearms instructors having 20, 30 people on a line, and there's only one or two firearms instructors out there. I think I posted last year at one point, if you don't know the names of the people that you've trained by the end of the course, then you had too many people in your class. And, you know, if you, that's why I limit my classes to like 10 people tops. Sometimes I'll go to 12 if I'm offering free seats to somebody who's sponsoring me. But by the end of the class, I know all 10 people. I know all 12 people. And I know how to tailor it based on what they're picking up and what they're not. And like with physical fitness, you see a lot of companies putting out, I'm not going to name names, but there's a couple that I talked to, the online fitness stuff. And they said, you have to have all this equipment. I don't have the money or the place to put in a deadlift set. I don't have the money or the place to have barbells and weights. And then they're like, well, you have to have that equipment in order to go through this program. Said also, I can't do a power clean because I have a paralyzed shoulder. Nothing goes above my shoulder. And I'm like, so they don't tailor it to the specific needs, but they also show an unwillingness to, they'd rather just forego the $5,000 that they want me to pay because they won't take the time to figure out how to adjust to my stupid limitations.
Yeah, I think it's always the challenge when you're trying to deliver to the masses, and whether the masses 10 or it's 100, that's always the thing. You have to decide, like, what are you willing, what are your right and left parameters here? What are you willing to do, and what's important to you? But you make the interesting, connection with knowing the people, in individuals in your class, but more specifically, like that they're all at certain places and they all need certain things. And I don't think if you haven't gone through that journey yourself, right, for a very long time, I think it's unrealistic to think that some people can pick this up, right? Some people probably do a better job at it than others. I've seen that happen in the fitness world with coaches where, they've been fit their whole life, right? They haven't really, they've gone through their challenges in terms of challenging themselves, but like they haven't had a health issue. They haven't had a limitation. They haven't had the shoulder injury. So when this person comes to them that has a shoulder injury, while they have all the book knowledge, right, and they've seen all the YouTube videos or whatever else that happens to be out there, you not being able to directly relate to that can be a limiter. And the only way to get around that is to have a lot of volume of reps with people that do have that limiter, and you have worked with them and you've made some mistakes and you've had some successes. And more importantly, you collaborate with other people that do know how to deal with that, and you're taking that knowledge and you're putting it into practice, and you're seeing what works and what doesn't work. Because what worked for person number one, it's not necessarily going to work for person number two. And I think going back to like how the institution handles training, it's like, this is what we're going to deliver no matter what, right?
Yeah.
And for whatever the limitations or restrictions might be, we only have this much time, we have this much money, we have this many people, we have to move them on to the next thing. Certainly that's going to contribute to people falling through the cracks and the gaps there. And I think one of the worst parts about that is because you didn't help that person that needed the most. It wasn't because they can't, or they're not even willing to do it. It's just they don't know how, because you didn't provide them enough value or information to be able to help them solve this problem, either by themselves or give them some resources to go solve it on their own. I think it's getting better in the law enforcement industry. I really do.
Yeah,
And it's a result of like guys like you that are putting stuff out, which is why I continue to do the show, is put people like you out there in front of people that, hey, there are solutions to this. These are some, again, I say this a lot on the show. It's like the State Farm commercial. We know a few things because we've seen a few things. But those newer coaches or instructors that are coming in, they just don't have that exposure yet. So they need to get that. And if they've been put in that position, right, without those exposures, it's likely because the people that put those in those positions didn't recognize that they needed those exposures, and also cannot provide them to those exposures in order to help them do the things that need to be done.
Right.
I think one thing, that I'll say is too, and I think we talked about this when I was on your show, Scott, which was, I like this if we're talking about like the law enforcement trainers and obviously the deficiencies we see in a lot of the things that are taught these days. It's a lot of the regurgitation that you mentioned, but I do think that the saying is like never attribute to malice, which can be attributed to incompetence. And I think that is kind of where a lot of them fall in, and it's not a fault of their own, like you're saying. I think that is just the way that they were taught, and they don't know another way. So it kind of brings me back to even, when we talk about like hearing instructors regurgitate information, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear that is that person really doesn't understand that material intrinsically. They're just saying what they heard. And the common example that I'll use is like on the range, where you'll just hear the guys say like, hey, slow, steady trigger.
Right.
It's like, okay, how do you get a person who's never shot a gun before to understand what that means, even though that's really not even helpful? And that's what they think that teaching is, as opposed to like the conceptual approach to coaching and learning. And I just wanted to say it out for the people listening, like, this isn't a poo-poo on everyone. It's just like, it takes I've had a couple conversations with instructors around the country this week, and they genuinely don't know. And it's difficult to try and pursue something that you think you're doing well, when in reality there's flaws. So, I just wanted to put that out there for the people and see if that aligns with what you're saying.
Man, I mean, I wouldn't have a show if that's all I was doing all the time. It was crapping on law enforcement, right? And it's not, I don't, it doesn't make sense to do that. I think it's important to call things out. So going back to what you're saying in terms of they just don't know, is it ignorance or incompetence, right? And so when the ignorance is different, and I don't think either are good, right, than incompetence. But when you look at incompetence, that's like, I don't know what I don't know, right? Or I think I know something more about something than I do know about it. We could go through the whole, the whole Dunning-Kruger thing here, but the point of that being is like, I think part of the problem is that the people that are around them are responsible for that incompetence, whatever it is. Whoever put them in that position is responsible for this, and you need to evaluate, like, what is the problem here? Do they not understand? Were they not trained correctly? Or are they just refusing to do the thing that they're supposed to be doing, right? Or do the things that they need to be doing in order to become more competent at this? And so you have to take responsibility of that from a leadership perspective and go, hey, do I need to put my arm around this guy or this person and give them some training and update this and recognize and help them with a plan to get better at this, and then give them an opportunity to do that, and some tools and some resources and whatever, and a check-in and a reevaluation. And after you've done that, however many times is the limit to doing that, then you need to make a decision. That's your job, right? That is your job. That this person is not going to get this. We need to find a different solution to this. Like, this is not the right job for you. And I'll say this too. I think a lot of folks wind up in these positions, maybe because of assignment. It was like the easy way out, trying to get out of patrol. This is a great way. It's a 9 to 5 now. It's Monday through Friday. I don't have to work weekends. I don't have to work nights. I don't have these other adjunct duties, whatever it happens to be. I think another thing is because they like doing it, right? They love shooting, right? That's great. I think that's important. I think if you're going to be an instructor, you probably should love it. But at the same time, if you're not good at it, right, that's a whole other thing. You need to be good at the thing that you do. I mean, I've worked with tons of trainers that love fitness. They love helping people, and they suck at it. Okay, can I help this person be better or suck less at doing this? And are they willing? Are they on the bus, right, to getting better at this? Because if they're not on the bus, then get them off the bus. This thing's got to keep moving forward. And those decisions, to me, clearly aren't being made often enough, and maybe not even being realized, so to even be made from a decision perspective. And that's a challenge for me, like, as a citizen, right, who may have to call one of these people on my worst day, like, and then not taking responsibility at a leadership level to making the right decision, at the right time. The worst decision is leaving that person to continue to do that thing, right? Because it's just easier that way.
And
I know.
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
I said, Jamie and I have talked about that a lot in the past, where we talked about like how if you're teaching something, you should be able to do it to a high degree of proficiency. And one of the sayings that I like best, and I forget where it came from, but it was that nobody cares what you did yesterday. And a lot of the instructors that we see in the space is like, well, I was on patrol for 10 years. And it's like, well, okay, that's great. But, or I used to shoot competitions, or I used to compete in powerlifting. It's like, all right, well, what can you do right now?
Yeah.
And I think that current competence is so important. And the second you stop doing the thing that you're going to be teaching is like kind of the downward spiral of where you can, evolve your teaching and training to.
Yeah, it's
I
really
think that. Oh, go
really
ahead, Scott.
caught in that bubble, in that silo, or in that echo chamber, as is often referred. Yep.
I think one of the most important things, and it's whether it's the fitness industry or law enforcement or anything, if you're going to be teaching it, you have to be a student. You have to continue your own education. You have to continue to develop your own skills, because it doesn't matter if you're a 30-year cop. I don't care what you did. Can you show me what you did now? And that doesn't even have to go like, I can't wrestle today like I could 15 years ago. My body just can't do it. But I can still teach it a little bit because I've been there and I understood it. But I also still continue to try to roll, and I try to continue to develop my skills, even though I can't do it as high level as I used to. I can still take you on the mat today and still do a pretty decent job.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a realization of the point of what you can and can't do, right? And like, what am I capable of doing? What am I not capable of doing? And what are the restrictions there? Like, and then being able to call a timeout and go, you know what? I probably shouldn't be doing this anymore, which is a very, very tough thing to do. Or what can I do, obviously, to improve this so that I can be better? You said it, like, being a student. It's also being a student of yourself. Like, if you're going to be critical of other people and constantly studying other people, other things, other techniques, other whatever skills that you're studying, you also have to be able to look at yourself and go, like, what do I need to study about myself to get better here? Like, what are the missing pieces? And again, what's controllable and what's uncontrollable? And I can't necessarily I can't necessarily change what's uncontrollable for me, but I could definitely influence that maybe by hitting the controllables. I think that's another thing too. I think there's some longevity in some places that it's been too long, right? It's not because it doesn't have, may not have anything to do with your age, as it may have to do with your mindset or your frame of mind and kind of where you enter into this thing. But that's seems to be a problem in law enforcement. Seems to
Yeah,
be
it comes down to relevancy, and there's two types of ignorances. There's the willfully ignorant and the just flat ignorant.
mm-hmm.
The ignorant that's willing to learn is who we want. Somebody who's like, I know I don't know everything, but I don't know how to fix it. For instance, when I first started delivering my advanced course design class, the original title for it was Instructional Design for Law Enforcement Instructors. Then I realized that just like me in 2005, I'd never heard of the term instructional design. 90% of or 99% of law enforcement instructors have never heard the term instructional design. So they're not going to go to a class that they don't understand the terminologists in the title. So I changed it to advanced course design, and I've started having to educate people what instructional design is, why they want it, and then why they need to learn it. But then the willfully ignorant are, what I'm doing is sufficient. It's worked for me always. I don't need to change anything.
Yep.
And that's the problem, I think, where you start seeing that pivot from, like you said, you have the brand new cops tend to shoot better than the old cops because the old cops become willfully ignorant. And that's the self-reflection that's missing. I don't teach firearms. I haven't done anything noteworthy in decades when it comes to firearms. I don't need to teach it. I used to do a lot of firearms instruction, but there's nothing I can teach somebody who's on the range now, I don't think, but that's my perception. And I'm not teaching patrol tactics. I'm not teaching how to handle domestics, those kind of things. Those things are perishable skills, but there are ways I can mitigate that by being aware of what I don't know and what I do know. I can do ride-alongs, go out with the guys. It's still not the same as actually doing the job, but it keeps my relevancy a little closer to what I'm delivering, because then I adjust and I adapt what I'm teaching to what these people are experiencing now, as opposed to this is what I'm teaching you that I learned 15 years ago, was appropriate 15 years ago.
Yep.
20 years ago, switching shoulders was the thing to do. In Jamie's class, I found out why I don't want to be switching shoulders. So that's, I think, one of the things that we're missing in law enforcement. Would you say that of all the podcasting, all the interviews that you've had related to that, would you say that that's probably the biggest thing that we can fix is, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that is a primary issue. Let me say this. Like I have zero experience in law enforcement. I have zero experience in doing the job of law enforcement, and same in the military. I was not in either. So I come at this from the interview perspective, from that position, from the baselines. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm ignorant to this. Treat me like I am. Like, I'm okay that way. You're not going to hurt my feelings. The questions I'm asking are genuine questions. Like, I would really like to have an answer for this. But because I've had so many interviews and so many experiences at this point, like, and I have these conversations, I feel very blessed. I feel very fortunate. It never gets past me that I'm in a very unique position, and I'm grateful for it. I mean, obviously being here today is one of those, to where I have dug in and asked questions from that place of myself, from, again, internally of myself, like, what is really important here? What do I think is important? Not just for me, but like what could generally help somebody else by me asking it. And what I found is like, if I have this question, it's generally, it's highly likely somebody else does too. And again, to your point about the ignorance piece, is I'm okay with that. Like, like, I'm fine. Like, I know I don't know. Not because, and it's not that it doesn't matter to me. It matters to me in that I want to know. I'm not going to do that job, right? Like, it's just not what I'm going to do. But there's value in asking the question for other people that might do it, despite the fact that I don't have any skin in this game, right? And again, the only reason I have any level of knowledge, which is minuscule compared to you guys with your experience and the things that you do now and the things that you've done in the past. um I do have enough to be able to ask the next question, right? And every time I ask it, it gives me a little bit more context. It gives me a little bit more depth to be able to ask the more specific question for the specific person that might be listening, to then again, add some value to whatever their thought process is or whatever that they're doing in their particular uh, situation, or circumstance. But it comes from like, I know nothing, and I just operate that way. Like, I know a lot of things, right? But I'm, as the old Forrest Gump would say, like, I may not be a smart man, but I do know what love is, kind of thing. Like, that's just kind of how I approach it. Like, okay, I'm not coming in this overconfident. Let me ask the question to confirm or change what I know, right? I don't need to be validated, right? But if I'm wrong, tell me that I'm wrong. But please, if you're going to tell me I'm wrong, explain to me why, right?
Yeah.
And I don't need a story. Like, I need some rationale. Like, I don't need, well, back in whatever, like to your example, Rick, what I did 15 years ago when this happened to me was this. That is not what I'm asking for. Give me some foundational principles or fundamentals that can help me understand why I'm wrong. And then now I'm in a position to figure my own problem out. But I don't think that's how a lot of this training happens. It's like, no, you don't do it that way. You do it this way. And then people are going to sit there and go, okay, well, I don't want to ask that question again. There's no why behind it.
Right. Yeah.
Outside of a story, right?
Yes. What, you mean war stories isn't training?
No.
That's,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to adjust everything now. Do you guys have any other questions for Scott regarding to question number 1?
I think there's like 3 questions in there, dude. And there's a lot.
Well, topic number 1. How about that?
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was good. I think we touched on pretty much everything in that question in a roundabout way.
Yeah, absolutely. So the second topic we wanted to address was you gave us some background on what got you into doing your podcast, what led to your guests and stuff. Specifically about podcasting, what would you say are some of the greatest lessons that you've learned?
Well, the first lesson is again, going back, like, I knew nothing. So I applied lessons that I'd learned in the past to go out and try to learn some things. I was very fortunate, much like, how we got connected. I started asking questions of folks. I think some of the biggest lessons up front is don't script things. I think depending on the format that you're going to be, depending on the type of information you're delivering, but like informational interviewing, especially if it's coming from like the place that I'm coming at it from, like, scripting things is not good. I don't think that's what people want. I think what I learned is, because I started that way, I was very nervous. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I interviewed plenty of people. That's what we do here at the gym every day. You get a new client, you have somebody sitting in front of you want to know all these things about them so you can help them. I applied those same principles, but I was doing it because I hadn't had reps at doing it. I put together scripts. And what I recognized, that was not a good way. It didn't feel natural to me. That's not how I operate. I want to have a conversation with somebody. And I see a lot of people getting into podcasting and they think they need to ask specific questions. And actually what I've seen it develop into, which annoys the hell out of me, is what they're doing is they're asking questions to find sound bites, right? To find the clip, to find the highlight reel, right? Or whatnot. And you've had an hour conversation with somebody, but you had 3 questions in there, and that's what you're going to put out to the people. And there's all this other value and all these other topics that you took that person's time, right? Or took that person's time to interview them with. They don't get paid for this, right? They're taking time out of their day. They're setting themselves up. They're canceling other things or whatever they're doing to do that. And I think that's very disingenuous. And what I felt, while that was never my intent, I felt like the scripting was a little bit disingenuous because it didn't flow really correctly. I was like, I have all these questions I got to ask them and I come back to. So I think one of those lessons is like, if you can't have a conversation with somebody, don't do a podcast, right? If that's what you're doing. I think it needs to be organic at some level, and let the thing go where it needs to go. You need to keep it on track, maybe have a framework, right? And some key topics. But that was one of the things. The other thing is, and we talked about this, I think, a little bit before we clicked on here, and that was like, when people start these things, like they're often worried about the outcome, right? Not the process. Where is this going? Well, I know I need to get it on YouTube, so we need to have, all these clips for this, and it's got to go on TikTok and Instagram, and this is where I'm going to put it, and this is like, it's got to be on Zoom, or it's got to be on whatever platform, or however I'm going to deliver this. It's got to go on Apple. And so they're worried about all those things. And while those things are extraordinarily important, they forget about the quality of what it is they're trying to do. And so a lot of the mistakes I made up front was like equipment. Like, I got to have all of these things to make this thing happen without really focusing on like, what is the message that I'm trying to get out there? And I think going back to like anything else, going coaching, instructing, whatever else, I think at first you kind of try to copy what you see other people being successful with. And the question would then be like, well, how are you measuring success? And I think what I knew ahead of time was that I didn't want to be measuring metrics. What I wanted to be measuring was like, was I getting better? Were these things getting better? And what was the feedback I was getting from the audience? And I went into it with a lot of patience there. Like, I told the guys that originally helped me kind of set things up, like, I don't want to know a metric for the first year. Don't tell me any numbers. I don't even want to know. Like, I don't want to see that stuff. I'm just going to do this thing. You guys put it where it needs to be, and we'll review this. If something really cool comes up and you want to share it with me, okay, but I'm not going to be like a metrics focus. This isn't a business for me, right? Or whatever. This, like, what's my intention? My intention was truly to provide value in whatever ways I could. And so, like, again, going back to mistakes, I think I messed that up with too much scripting, too much worrying about equipment, too much of, having to have the right guest, right? And you have to have like these bigger name guests, going back to that one of the first ones that I had on there. Mistake. That was a mistake. Like, having like these big names on, right? Thinking that you're going to get traffic, from this, or this is somehow going to grow your thing. And it wasn't that I wasn't interested in talking to certain people, because I was at some level, but I was thinking about the outcome of talking to that person rather than what should have been happening during that talk.
Okay.
Like, and I think you see that, like, a lot of people make that same mistake. I think and what you see is like people having the same people on their podcast, and they just kind of trade, seats, and they just kind of keep going around. So if you look at any of the audience that we've had, or excuse me, any of the guests that we've had, like, I've had some really obscure people knew nothing about them. Right. Yeah, exactly. Those are the people I want to talk to. I was like, dude, this dude's doing something really interesting here. Like, I'm curious about this. Great messaging, right? Super articulate. Like, this is important information. Let's get into it, and not being afraid to do that. Right. And,
Yeah.
Not focused on how many follows am I going to get, how many likes, how many clicks, how many downloads on YouTube, how many subscribers can I pick up from this? But you can see those, where that takes people in their journey of podcasting, if that's what they're focused on. It's pretty obvious to me. So again, mistakes were getting caught up in that, and not, what the intention was in the first place.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. It never even dawned on me, but as you were talking about it, I started going back through I was doing a lot of webinars and podcasts in 2019 to 2021. On LinkedIn, I was getting a lot of name for my learning and development background and my training and all that stuff. And now I recognize why I didn't really get much like good feeling from those podcasts. But why I like your podcast so much is that it's a conversation. And that's how we've decided to do it, is that we don't script anything. And we pick who we're going to have on based on they interest us. We think that they might have something interesting to say, and we want to hear their insight. Because we also recognize that we're not, the three of us together, we might make up a 90 IQ. And we're not the smartest dudes in the room. We don't want to be, but we can identify people who might have a solution that none of us have ever thought of, because we want to provide solutions. We're not just going to crap on other instructors. We're not going to, we're not doing anything for likes. We're not doing anything for follows. I have no expectation I'll ever make a dime off of this. And neither do Bill or Jamie. We're doing this because we're curious, and we want a voice out there for people to listen to. So if one person listens to the podcast or listens to our lives, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea, I'm going to apply that, we've done our job. We've succeeded. You know, and I'm super excited. I've got 60 subscribers on YouTube now. I'm huge, right?
Right.
We don't care about that. At least I don't. I don't care about how many followers I have. I care about all my followers. I care about all the people who watch, only because I want to make sure that I'm serving them and that they're getting quality out of what I'm producing. And I'm just not another mechanical voice in the cloud and static of content.
Hey, I want to jump on real quick and say this because my computer's about to die. I had to go to my daughter's wrestling tournament, so I'm out in the middle of a park in the middle of West Phoenix doing this, and my computer died a lot faster than I thought it would. But so I'm going to bounce. But Scott, great to have you on here. I appreciate you. I appreciate all that you've done for me, for our profession, all the knowledge you give me, all the names of people you connected me with. Like, really do appreciate you. Really appreciate your insights and how you translate everything from the fitness industry to law enforcement, because it is very relatable. Coaching, whether you're coaching fitness or you're coaching instructors or coaching law enforcement, it's all the same stuff. So I appreciate all your insight and appreciate you. So my computer's about to die, so I just want to throw that out there. I'm going to bounce. So I appreciate you guys. We'll see you guys next week.
See you,
Feelings mutual, Jamie.
Good
Thank
luck
you,
to your
man.
daughter.
See you, man.
Thanks.
So yeah, that's your lessons learned. Never even thought about scripting. Didn't even know that was something that people would do. And now that I recognize the questions that they would ask, because sometimes I'm like, that doesn't really follow from what we're talking about. I didn't realize it's because they're going for the sound bites,
Yeah.
that they're just they're doing content for their sake, not for the industry's sake,
Exactly right.
which is exactly what my page is about on Instagram. And what Bill and Jamie and I are trying to do with these lives is that we're doing it for the industry's sake. We're hoping, we're doing these lives so that people would jump on and ask questions, kind of like a talk show format. And I'm kind of sad that we don't have people asking questions, but this is also why we're doing a new format where you're going to come on in 2 weeks. For anybody who's listened to this and watched it, because Friday nights are tough to get people to watch anything live, that they'll come on Instagram and ask you the questions that they get from watching this episode.
Well, listen, man, I'll say this, like, you nailed it. Like, it's why are you here? And I think you said something about, like, if one person gets something from this, then we did our job tonight. That was kind of, that's my take too, is like, if you can help somebody, I'll say this, like, those conversations, the way you described that is the reason you guys were on Iron Sights, right? Is exactly that reason. And it's interesting, again, go back to measuring metrics and success and however you're doing that. You'll see podcasts that are, they're all about the sponsorships, right? They're all about getting paid. They're turning it into a business. There's nothing wrong with turning your podcast into a business. I would like to have monetized my business more. Like when we, there's things that are this podcast more, right? But that is a very, very tenuous thing to do, and still be genuine and authentic and all the things that, those buzzwords that people use. And you will see, it's very obvious. You can see who's doing that, right? With the intent of, I'm doing this for me, I'm doing this for the money, I'm doing this for the free, gear, or whatever else that I might be getting in on the background, versus those that are generally trying to help somebody or deliver good information. There is a way to do it. There's a way to monetize your podcast and still remain whole, right? And still remain true. But I think you're seeing everybody's got a podcast now, and I would question. I listen to stuff and I watch stuff for a while. I don't take one clip and make a decision on it. I might see one clip and go, "Yep, there's another one," but I'll give them a chance. Let's see what's up. They're just doing the thing. They're learning the thing. Let's see if they learn, right? And what happens with this. And I hope that's what people get from our from my show is like, look, man. Going back to the guests, like some of the best podcasts I've ever done have gotten like a fraction of the views and the likes and the stuff. And how do I know they're the best? Because I got the most out of it. And it may not be publicly, where people are commenting and showing stuff, but I get messages, I get DMs, I get emails, people reach out and go, dude, that was awesome. Like I got so much from that. If I get one person that says that about a podcast that gets whatever, 300 views or something like that, or 300 downloads, that's good enough for me, man. I take that as a win. That's a win in the win column for me every single time. Like This is so helpful for me. I mean, I'll give you some examples. I do I'll do stuff on mental health and wellness. And I'm very careful about who I choose to have on that podcasts for that. I learned quite a bit about that through doing them, through about the industry of mental health and awareness. And unfortunately, there's a lot of takers there, versus givers. It's just it's an unfortunate thing. At the same time, there's some people doing a really good job with that, and there's some people that are bringing good messages to it, and so I'm careful with that. But I've had a few of those on, and you know what? There's not a lot of like sexy sound bites for those. There's not a lot of sexy
Right.
clips for those. You hope that it makes a connection with people, but it doesn't always. I recently did one with a guy by the name of Josh Burton, who's an ex-Delta guy. He's an entrepreneur and he does some things now. Elevated operator. You can find him on Instagram there.
Yeah.
And I'm disappointed that more people haven't listened to that podcast and the things that he had to say, because he's not a mental health expert or wellness expert or whatever. He was just sharing his story and his journey on how he helped himself and how he's seen other people be helped by the things that he's done. And again, a little disappointed more people don't listen to that stuff with the people that I do choose to have on there. I get the reasons why, right? It's not exactly fun information to listen to. It's not ultra entertaining, so to speak, but it's valuable stuff. But I got to tell you, a week after that, I get a text message from a guy who listened to it, and he said, "Look, man, I'm really challenged right now, and that podcast really hit home for me. I've been dealing with these things, and I've been having some trouble with some resources." And I was like, "Where are you right now, man? What are you doing?" And he's just sitting in his car or doing whatever he was doing. I go, "How can I help you right now? Like, do you have somebody to talk to? What experiences have you had?" Within 90 minutes, I was able to get him connected through another connection that I've had on the podcast that got him scheduled with a culturally competent therapist in the thing that he does in his state, right? And paid for, right? Because so that he didn't have to fly through the employee assistance program and send up any red flags or have any more terrible conversations with people that were not culturally competent because he's caught in a system or whatever. And that's what I mean about the value that I get from it, because man, that's there's no paycheck bigger than stuff like that. And then following up with me, it's like, dude, I just got this appointment scheduled for Monday. I'm going to be in there Monday. Thank you for that. And that's all.
Yeah.
Those things to me are super important.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, dude.
Yeah, that really hits, because we do this because we care about the people,
Yeah, it's true.
and it's very clear, and that's one of the things I've always enjoyed about your podcast and you as a person. I've talked to you more offline than I ever did on the podcast. We talked
True.
for like an hour and a half, but you every now and then I get an email from you checking in, saying, "Hey, I just had this guest. I think you two are aligned. You should connect." And it's led to some. I've got a true friendship with Bill and Jamie because of these kinds of things. They saw our podcast and they reached out. Or Jamie volunteered his course for the training evaluation program. He
Right.
was one of the four that volunteered for it.
Right.
And Bill and I connected through your podcast as well. So it's led to some really good friendships, as well as professional connections, which are well and good. But at the end of the day, I know that if my wife heard me say this, she'd be frustrated. The pay only goes so far.
Yep.
It's nice to pay the mortgage and not have to worry about it, but you can't put a price on somebody's success. One person taking Bill's class that I helped him work on for use of force or something saves that person life on the street. Everything I did, everything Bill did is 100% worth it. And that podcast I was on with you that led me to Bill, that led to that, tweaking of a course, that led to that quality instruction, saving that person's life or a citizen's life, is 100% what we're about.
That's why I brought up Chris Curris at the beginning of this, and the good do concepts for those people that are following them. You guys might be familiar with his Breacher Bar and things that he's doing down there, but that's exactly how this works. Like it's about connecting people. I get it's weird for me because I didn't ever see that happening. That's a little weird to think about, but I'm able to make connections and I'm happy to do it. When I'm out SHOT Show is going to be in a couple of weeks here. That's actually where I'm taking that second call from, and I will walk into that thing, and I will meet people, and people will be introduced to me, and I'll be able to introduce people. That's what this thing has always been about. Like, I think I mentioned that to you guys in the text thread that we had going on. Like, this is the reason for
Yeah.
those kind of things. And so again, going back to podcast, you had asked about podcast mistakes and things like that. Like, if you don't have and I think this speaks to like law enforcement instructors. Law enforcement in general, but law enforcement instructors, like, you have to care about that shit, man. Like, you have to care about people and their success, right? It cannot just be, and how are we measuring that success? So if the administrative task is go through the tick list so the guy can pass the academy qual, and then you feel good about that, and that's it, that's all you have to do, I think it's a problem, man. I think it's a problem. And when I have people on the show, and I've had several of these guests on the show, including you guys, like, that is not good enough, right? And they recognize that. They're like, congratulations, you've gotten this done. Now let me tell you, and let me show you, and let me provide resources and be here for you for all the other things you need to do in order to take the next steps to be better at this thing. I think that's a big problem. I think people take the job of instructor, and they think the job is, I just have to deliver the material. It's not like, what happens after this? Like, how do I make this person, independent of me and be okay with that? I think that's a major problem in the training industry at large, is like, people are trying to show everything that they know and show the student how much they don't know and how they should be dependent on that instructor, continuously, right? And then when the student ends up learning that wasn't very good, and there's so much more to know, and I need to move on, an instructor has a problem with that. Well, you shouldn't have a problem with that, because that's what you set yourself up for, dude. Like, that's
Right.
that's what's up. Now you're bitter, and weird behaviors start to happen. Like, oh, now I have to have this other fancy course to rebuild, my clientele or my leads list or whatever else. I need to create something weird, right? And then, well, how do you do that? Well, let me look at what these other instructors are doing. I might not have the knowledge base or whatever to do this, but I know if I put that class on my schedule, it seems popular and people are going to sign up for it. I think it's the same in the law enforcement training industry, is like, what is everybody else doing? Right. And let me copy that, because that seems to be the right thing to do, rather than going back to home base with, like, what do my people need? What's
Yeah.
important for them? Not just today, like, but in the future. And how do we set them up for success in the future? Because if you don't think like that, I think that's a problem, man. I think it's a big problem. I think it's sort of endemic in law enforcement training in general. With no thought about, like, I just sent that person out on the street thinking they're good. That's not okay, dude. That's not okay.
And actually, I can see a parallel with the podcasting stuff too, because a lot of what you said about how instructors, they're ticking a box, goes back to the lesson learned of, you don't need a script. You're not doing it for your outcomes. You're doing it for your audience. But also that what you just said about them inventing courses, you start seeing people who have no experience in something start a podcast about something they don't know anything about, with the intent of implying that they have
They do.
knowledge and
Yeah.
they have the background. So it's like they feel like, if I have a podcast that validates me as being a knower of things, when in actuality they're not really doing it. So their podcast started going off in these weird tangents where they have, I kind of feel that about I don't I kind of feel that about the Sean Ryan shows, that he has a lot of interesting people on, but sometimes I'm like, are you just trying to get an episode on Amazon? It's like Strange Things, or we're going to talk about the aliens built the pyramids. I'm like, what are you trying to do? Are you doing it for content at this point, or are you trying to have, I don't know. You see what I'm saying though?
Yeah, if you're asking me a question about him specifically, I'm sure I don't know the answer to that. But
No, not him
uh,
specifically, but
but
just that
but
was the first example that popped into my
uh,
mind. It's like I was watching Sean Ryan, and I'd start seeing these weird guests, and he's got enough where he can pull people on that interest him, and that's fine. I'm not criticizing him at all. It's just some of the choices, I'm just like, I don't understand where this is coming from.
well, I
So
think that's the question that the audience asks, and I've always tried to do my very best to respect the audience, right? Like,
yeah,
that is the most important thing, right? That's why I'm doing it. But you know, you pose an interesting question, and I think Sean Ryan knows his audience better than anybody,
Yeah.
right? Whoever that is, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that I do. My point in saying that is when you're looking at other people setting up podcasts and the reasons they're doing things, it would be the same as anything else that anybody's trying to sell you. Like, what is what is the purpose for this? And I think, you know, obviously with as much stuff that's out there now, and again, going back to the training industry and kind of what people are seeing other people offering in terms of training or the information that they're providing, I've just always been of the mindset where I'm like, okay, what's the point of this? Like, what are
Yeah.
we trying to get at? And I think with people being inundated with information, they don't always think like that, right? They just want, again, going back to answers to the test or the next new thing. I think, you know, people need to do a better, they need to be more discerning about what they're consuming and why they're consuming it at the larger level, and more specifically root back to like why is this person saying this, why is this person doing this episode with so and so, and ask yourself that question. And if it seems disingenuous, it likely is. Like, what can we, I don't really don't know what else to say, you know. And there's a lot of stuff out there. For me, I can honestly 100% say nothing I've ever done has been disingenuous. I
Yeah.
haven't sold out to anybody. Nobody pays me to do this stuff. Like, if on the occasion I have had a few sponsors for the show, um, and anything that I may have said about that sponsor, like, they didn't tell me what to say. Like, I said what I wanted to say, right? And I've had very few, very few.
Yeah.
And I hope to have some in the future, but those are people I want to partner with because I believe in what they're doing, right?
Right.
And how they're doing it. And I can get up the next day and look myself in the mirror and go, why did I say what I said? Not because they're writing me a check, but because I believe in what they're doing and I want other people to write them checks to get the benefit of whatever that they're doing. That's
Yeah.
that's it at the end of the day. But this thing has turned into a little bit of a monster, and it's still kind of the wild west,
Yeah.
from the podcast perspective. And there's a lot of stuff out there, man.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm certainly not into all of it.
That's a really good point. And I think that the term comes down to integrity. You know, why are you doing this for the sponsorships so that every time you get a new scope, it's the best thing on the planet, it's the only thing you're going to use. And then
Mhm.
2 months later, this is the best scope on the planet, completely different brand.
I know better than
It's
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
as people with integrity who are doing things for the benefit of their audience and not for their own personal benefit are not going to be the multi-million dollar influencers who get the sponsorships, who get the free stuff and all that stuff. It's I think that that's one of the prices we pay. But like you said, at the end of the day, I can look in the mirror and be okay with what I've done and who I am.
Yep. I mean, that again, I don't want to try to sell this to anybody, but honestly, like, that is the impetus for the podcast, is making sure that I'm not doing anything that people would question my integrity on,
Right.
or for. And if they have questions about it, they're happy to. I'm gonna have an answer for everything, and it's gonna come from a place of deep thinking about it, and I'll have a solid response. You might not like it, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like, I'm okay with that if you don't like it, but I'll know I'm being honest at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because you can't get that back. Trust is important to me, and the people that listen, right? They're important to me whether they know it or not. So I'll say that publicly. Like, I always think if somebody tags me, you know, puts me up, I always try to acknowledge that stuff. Sometimes it's hard. Like,
Yeah.
I try to do more than an emoji response, right? You know, it's like, hey man, thank you for sharing this. I really appreciate it. It's helpful. That's not like, it's not automated texting. That's me, you know, or
Yeah.
automated copy that's going in the thing. Like, I truly believe that, because this is, you know, it's why I do it. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a footnote, when I share things or or I include you as a collaboration, it's because I like you and I want to broadcast you out. So I didn't realize that when you did the collaborator thing on Instagram, it actually made it part of their stream. I thought it
Oh
was just a
yeah.
way of tagging.
Yeah.
So I stopped doing that a lot because I didn't realize I was like spamming the people I respect. But I've tried to dial that down a bit. But I never expect people to immediately respond to my stuff. But that's one of the things I do also is that if somebody shares my stuff, I make an effort to say thank you, or I make an effort to like it, because I know that if they're sharing my stuff and I interact with it, it's going to promote them also. It's that whole, we talk about this all the time. One tide lifts all boats. And that's what we're trying to do. We try to promote everyone that we respect, and we just don't interact with the people we don't.
Yeah, I mean, the game is now too, if you look at social media, whatever, that stuff's critical to get your message out there. So like if somebody's helping me get the message out, like, and I'm going to do my very best to acknowledge that and say thank you for it in whatever way that I
Yeah.
can. And with the subject matter that we're covering, again, going back to kind of what podcasts are sort of turned into in terms of hot takes and all that stuff. Certainly I'll put like any hot take that something that somebody perceives as a hot take. I'm not putting it out there as a hot take. I'm putting it out there as like, I think there's some discussion here that can be had around this. I get that's going to ruffle some feathers, and I'll preface it with like, if we can just keep our emotions to the side, like, and listen to this for a second. And if you need more context, you're going to have to listen to the show. Instagram is a horrible place for providing deep levels of
Yeah,
context.
it really is.
That's why you don't see me that active there. Like because the information is in the episode. I just talked to this person for an hour and a half. Like there's a lot to this. But if I put something up, it's because I generally am curious about what people's um uh thoughts are on whatever the thing is. It's never been about having somebody on to promote their business and promote mine, because I don't
Right.
really have anything to offer you, right? Like from the podcast perspective, except if you see me as a vehicle to promoting your own product, right? And I've been trying to be very careful about not having guests on that's all they're interested in doing.
Yeah.
Yes, there's benefit that can be gained to that, but if I'm having you on, it's not because I want to promote your product, or if I get the sense that that's all you're looking to do. There's depth to this, and again, Instagram or social media is a very tough place to do that, and that's why I've chosen the long format of podcasting and not being that guy that posts 10 reels a day. I just
Yeah.
Plus I don't have it in me. I
Yeah.
don't have it in
It's a
me.
lot of freaking work.
I
People
have
don't
shit to do.
understand. It's
Yeah,
a
I have shit
lot
to
of
do.
work.
I got to put food on my table. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. We've had people reach out and ask to come on.
Mm-hmm.
And our question is, what solutions do you have for law enforcement training? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, this is the course I teach. I'm like, sorry, man, that's not really what we're about. We're not an advertising platform.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, dude, I loved everything you said. Well, that conversation, I was just like drawn into it. So I was just like eating it up. But dude, I don't even know the right way to say this, but like the way that you approach your podcast, right? And the term good dude gets thrown around a lot, but I don't think there's a better term for it, right? And the way that you've approached that, and I'm sure even with your personal training, like I've gone to you for coaching and stuff like that before with the Red
Mm-hmm.
Dot Fitness stuff. And like that integrity that you apply to the podcast, to coaching, to interviewing folks and talking to people, I think directly correlates to what we were talking about earlier, which was the way that the instructors and law enforcement need to be treating their people, and not see it as a hierarchy of I'm the instructor, you're the students. Like if you're put in that position, like you, just like with you in pursuing podcasting and all the things that you do, like you genuinely approach that with like, I'm here to help people. I'm here to make people better, and I'm here to get some messages out to people that are maybe don't know, and share that knowledge with everybody. And it's so funny just hearing you guys talk about that, how that is the exact same mindset that I've seen in successful trainers, I've seen in successful shooters or jujitsu guys or combatives guys, whatever. And if that is not the approach that folks take, the program is usually not worth its salt. So like I just wanted to commend you for that, and how even though it was a discussion on podcasting, how I think that mindset just directly speaks to what we're trying to promote in the training industry as a whole, is just approaching things with integrity, having the right mission for what you're doing, and understanding that if whether you're put in that training position or you chose it, the second you're in there, you have a moral obligation to provide the best possible content to your people, because of the stakes in that game are high. And even if it's for a different avenue, like your people are trusting you that you have their best interest at heart, dude. I just wanted to say that was awesome to hear that and be able to realize like that's the same exact thing that we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for saying as much. I mean, it sounds like for people listening to this, I recognize that might sound weird. Like, and what does that really mean? And this guy, does this guy really think like that? I think, without talking about myself, like if for guys like you guys know me, you guys know me well enough. Like this, I don't know how to be a character,
Yeah.
right? I don't know, and I would never want to live that life. Like, and I think like again, people get into the game, whether it's as an instructor or a coach or a podcaster or even a law enforcement officer, and they again in law enforcement, you're putting on the uniform, and so you put on the uniform, the cape, or whatever, however you want to refer to it, and then they change into a character, which isn't them, right? Or they've chosen the job, you know, as because they think they can play this character. They've chosen the job of instructor, like because they think they can play this character. I got to me and all my experience of life, just in general, like that is just a really tough life to live. Like and it starts to manifest some really weird behaviors and things that people do. And I think again, social media exposes some of that stuff, and like you start to see it happen. It's like you see people like implode, like or completely implode. And we've seen it happen online with some of these bigger names where like, is that where who they were the whole time? Or is this character that they created themselves ultimately created that problem for them, and now they can't keep it up anymore, or the truth comes out? And whether there's an integrity issue there or not, right? There is. I think there's fundamentally there probably is, but I think people get carried away with this. And again, it goes back to like being an instructor, or being a law enforcement officer and getting yourself to a point where you have just kind of skirted around the edges of reality, right? And now you find yourself in this position where when reality does strike, like there's no foundation there, right? And so whether that's your instructor or whatever, and then your whole life explodes, right? And then you lose that identity, which wasn't a real identity in the first place, right? And so trying to be discerning about who like comes on the show or who I talk to or who I connect with people, like those are all key points for me. It's like who is this person? I get this question a lot, or I used to, when I first started. And I think this was before other people were doing podcasts and social media turned into what it's kind of turned into in the last 5 years. But people would ask me like, hey, so is that guy the same guy in person as he is online? Is that instructor the same? You just took this course. Like, is that guy the same guy that we see online, or is he totally different? Like, people were asking themselves that question. And I was like, I've not ever been in a place, or because of I think of my like assessment process before investing in a course or traveling to something or having somebody on the podcast. This is an investment for me. Like these episodes cost money, a lot of money, and it ended up putting out. There's labor and time. I don't do all the behind the scenes stuff. I know what I'm not good at, right? And so I have somebody do that for me. That's Eli. If there was no Eli, there would be no Iron Sights podcast or whatever. My point being is like if you run that character, right, which is a make believe or whatever. I have never run into anybody where I sat them down in the chair. That's actually, it's partially untrue. There was one guy that I had at one point where I was like, I thought this is who you were, and I see you being somebody else, trying to be somebody else online. I thought you confirmed my suspicion, right? You are a character. You are disguising the reality and the truth of who you are. And everything that I thought I knew, you just confirmed it for me. And I give you every opportunity to not be that guy, not be that person. And actually, Bill, I think that episode is the one you and I connected pretty closely on, where it was exposed. And I learned a lesson there. Like, and I don't think it was a bad thing. I think it was important to have happen, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to like, hey, how can I expose people? How can I back somebody into a corner? How can I, twist this thing out of them or whatever else? And I think, again, going back to the integrity piece, the importance of that is like if you start to compromise that at any level, man, that's a slippery slope, dude. That's a tough place to come back from. And it's unfortunate that a lot of times like social media and what drives that thing, including podcasting and whatever platforms you're putting out on it, ends up compromising people.
Yeah.
That's a rough one for me to watch. It's a lot of times you can see it happening. You're like, oh boy,
Yeah.
this is gonna, this is gonna happen. And so when it happens, you're like, not surprised. That's unfortunate. I feel bad for that dude, but I saw it coming. Like there's several of them out there, and you've seen them. Some of them quietly gone away, and some of them it's
Mhm.
been very public and very like embarrassing, and it's tough.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny, all these things you bring up, and it's like I never in my mind would have considered being something other than, and that's one of the things I like about Jamie and Bill and you is that you are what you get. What I see in person, I know that when we finally meet, we get to shake hands, you're gonna be the same dude, probably a lot bigger than what I have in my mind, because right now you're like this big on a screen. But and you're gonna be surprised at how skinny and noodly I am. But it never crosses our minds to be anything but genuine, and we want to have integrity because we think it's integral to not only our jobs but how we live our lives. And so we want to have honest people on, and we want to have honest conversations. And so far, we've been lucky that we haven't, we've only been doing this for 2 months now, 3 months, and we haven't had anybody that are just like, what did we bring on the show?
Mhm.
And honestly, I don't know how we're going to handle it because I can be pretty confrontational. If I catch somebody, it's like that was my favorite part of being a cop is that I never really had to yell at people. I bark to get their attention. I just go back and I talk to them like I'm talking to you. But I would just ask them questions. And over the time of asking questions, it's like, so I have one last question. You said this, and this, but in actuality, here's the situation that doesn't line up at all with your this.
Mhm.
What's going on? And that's when they blade up and decide if they're going to kill me or not. I
Right.
don't know how that's going to go on a podcast. I think Bill will just be like, "You're wrong and you're lying." I don't know. Maybe the
My take
Marine will
on that
come
is
on.
I honestly don't think you guys need to be concerned with that because of your
Yeah,
ability to assess, right? Like that's again, like the the reason you were on the show in the first place, on the Ironside show in the first place, is because that was identifiable, that was not going to have to be an issue or be an issue for me. I don't think between the three of you guys, and if somebody made a suggestion, here's what I know about the three of you guys. If somebody suggested that somebody should come on the show and one of those people questioned the integrity of somebody, they're going to go, hold on a second. Like no, like you guys are going to be honest with one another and filter all that out, because you guys won't be afraid to tell the truth or how you're feeling about that thing and back it up with the reasons why. You guys will have a discussion about it. You'll all be friends at the end of the day, and you'll make the best decision for the team. Um, it's interesting, like how public people are, but how in isolation they are at the same time.
yeah,
And I know like this group started in like DMs, or on an email, right? There was a DM chat, and then it became more public or whatever. I know there's a lot of private DM conversations that go on in the background with people, and it's those people, it's the good people. They're not public, right? That are having these conversations in the background that you'll occasionally see pop into Instagram comments or YouTube comments or whatever else, or be on a podcast. But they are very discerning about who they associate themselves with, and
yeah.
I don't think I think you guys would be fine. I don't think you have to worry about it being surprised.
I appreciate that because you're absolutely right. We we talk a lot about who we're interested in having on and why. And if somebody says, I don't know that guy, I don't know if I trust him, or actually what you don't know that I do know, because we're not a bunch of grannies sitting around having gossip.
Mm,
If one of us doesn't like somebody, then the group, it's like we'll be friends with our friends, but
mm,
if we can't be friends with other people's friends, then that's going to be an issue.
yep. Yeah. I also don't see this as like you guys being out there like trying to touch the robe, of somebody. Like if you're gonna have somebody on, it's because you have some very specific questions for them and a very
Yeah.
specific topic.
Yep.
And I see that a lot just in social media, even in firearms instruction classes. I think it's really bad there. If I'm being honest, I think it's a problem there that people are going to classes, or instructors being invited into agencies, for that matter, because somebody there wants to touch the robe, right? And not that that person isn't a good shooter or maybe isn't a good instructor at any level, but the integrity level there is a problem. And if you expose your people to that and you say, this is who you want to follow, and this is who you want to be taking advice from and lessons from, and that's a shitty person, you know, that has these underlying integrity issues, I think it shows up. And I think it shows up. I think it rubs off. And I think it's getting a little bit better. I think it's getting a little bit better, but there's still some folks out there that are certainly questionable. I'm not naming names or anything. I'm not going to go there. That's not what I'm about. But
we're not
yeah,
about
the
that
point of
either.
that is I think over time, going back to the having the character, you're on a clock, man. There's only so long before that's gonna wash itself out, and you're gonna be in a world of hurt trying to figure out how do you friend of mine, Joe Dawson, used this analogy, and I won't be as vulgar as he was when he said it on my show. Love Joe, but it's like basically it was like once you've put that thing in your mouth, no amount of toothpaste is going to wash that taste out of it. It's like putting toothpaste back in the tube. It's another way of looking at it. And once you do that, like that's a tough one to come back from.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about some people that I talked to that have forewarned me and said, you might want to steer clear because of these issues. And later on, I see that those people exploded
Yep.
online
Yep.
or, they were exposed or what have you. But we're also, I think, for lessons learned and for the podcasting bit, you've hit on a lot of really good things. Don't script, don't seek people out because you think they're going to promote you better. Um, have integrity, be genuine, and get people who are good for the audience, not necessarily for your own reputation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about people wanting to touch my robe. I don't wear robes, and my robes are ratty if I had one. But I think you have some really good advice, and we appreciate the respect that you show us on how we're conducting ourselves. Do you have anything else you want to cover, Bill, before we jump on third and final topic?
I only have one question, but I might just save it for the end.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the third thing is, what's your plans for the future and where do you see yourself going?
Well, it's an interesting question. So I got to be honest, like by the end of last year, which is, only a month ago, I kind of struggled. I struggled a little bit. I had to take a step back from the podcast a little bit. And so you'll see actually there are less episodes towards the end of the year. We're usually pretty much on time. There's one a week. There's two a week every week. One is very health and fitness focused. I sit with my team, or sometimes I have other guests on occasion. I'll sit with my team. We'll talk about health and fitness related topics. And then the other episode is the After Dark version, which is how we got connected, where it talks more about the world of preparedness, a lot of law enforcement, combatives folks, people in the field at a lot of different levels. There's a variety of things we talk about there. But I got to the end of the year. I was getting towards the end of the year, and I was a little frustrated. Really frustrated actually. It was like, with all the things that are going out there, all the messages that are going out there, how, if you're trying to get your message out, and that is important to me, getting the message out there, and feeling throttled, which has definitely happened. And to some extent, as an example, like all of a sudden one day, like when you look at your insights, say like on Instagram as an example, only 10% of my followers were actually seeing my stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not doing it for anybody else, man. Like I'm doing it for those 90%. I don't care if that's 5,000 people or 35,000 people, which is basically where the Instagram, followers are right now. Like, I don't care. Just show it to the people that said they wanted to hear it. Right. So that was super frustrating. I was like, man, this sucks. Like, how do I change this? And then it's like you start to go again to that weird behavior of like, I'm not getting the result I want from this. And so what changes do I need to make? Do I need to do like more AI shit in my, in my reels and things like that? What do I need to change? Like, because to me, it's just about the message, right? But what I need to do to capture people's attention, or more specifically, get the social media platform to push it the direction I want it to go, which is just the people that said they wanted to hear or see our stuff. So there was a little bit of that. There was also a little bit of like kind of, I don't want to say recircling the same topics, but like what's really important going into next year specific to if I look at things like what are the specific topics that should be covered to continue on the mission. And part of it was like maybe I need to see and just let other people be having these conversations in the way they need to have it, and re-examine like how to circle back to whatever's coming in the future, and hit some things. So I'll be honest, I almost stopped doing it. Like I almost said, you know what, I
Really?
think I'm done. By the way, there's a lot of work that gets put into this, and my bandwidth has been stretched,
Yeah.
right? Like the business is busy, it needs my attention. I do a lot of things. And so to answer the question specifically, what I what ended up happening is, Spotify ends up putting out like the year in review, like who listens to what, like they're pushing this to the users. Here were the top podcasts you listen to, or here's the music you listen to. And folks started posting that and tagging me, and they were tagging me in their stories, and I was all of a sudden, it was like exactly at that time when I was telling you I was kind of struggling and kind of going through this process in my own head. I started seeing this stuff, and I'm like, whoa, like these they're it's tough in the I would say this in the podcast game. It's tough to know who your audience is unless
Yeah.
they're communicating with you. Right. The metrics in YouTube are a little bit better than they are like on the audio platforms, but I have a fairly large audio platform audience, and we get very limited metrics like who are these people? How do I know how much they listen to? Like what do they really like? You can see downloads, and that's kind of it. Like where are they? What are they listening to it on? There's very few demographic, there's very little demographic information, but when I started seeing this stuff pop up and who else they were listening to, like I was popping up, there's like Joe Rogan, like Ironside's podcast, Sean Ryan show, whatever. And there was a few maybe random things maybe I had heard of, I hadn't heard of. And then I'd see the next one and the next one, and they were tagging me. And I was like, damn, these people, and it would show how many hours they listen to, right? Of the podcast. And also kind of where it ranked them as a listener on that platform. Like you are in the top 2% of listeners to this podcast on this platform. That really hit me hard. I was like, and then when I was commenting back to them, like, hey man, this is a little humbling. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much. Like, I don't know what to say really other than that. I was getting into discussions with them, and they were telling me how the podcast had helped them, what they specifically were listening to. And so for people listening that do listen to the show, that shit's important to me and it matters. Please reach out. Tell me what you want to hear. Tell me what you liked. Tell me what was helpful, because it absolutely influences the direction that the podcast goes. And I wasn't getting a lot of that because I wasn't getting that interaction because of how the platforms were sending out my stuff. I was getting likes and follows and whatever, but I wasn't getting that engagement, that social media is supposed to be about. And for me, it's like what's happening in the back end. Yes, the comments are important, but the DMs were important to me. And so they gave me some really good insights that, what we're doing is a good thing, and that they love these parts about it, and they were getting a lot of value out of it. They're taking it back to their agencies, they're taking it back to their training buddies, all these different levels. And so to circle that back, I went from I'm gonna probably not do this anymore to now this is important, and I got some direction on how to do that. And without giving that away, there are some things that I want to do. There are more people that I know I need to talk to and want to talk to expose people to. There are companies that I think should be talked about more, and specifically the back end of those companies, going back to integrity, right? Being genuine, what the mission is, some of the stories behind these companies of their mission and their integrity, and how they've helped other people or what they're doing for certain people and how they do it. I think more people need to hear about that stuff. And it's disingenuous for them to talk about the things that I want to talk to them about, because it would look like they were trying to sell themselves or virtue signal, the things that they're doing. So I have a few of those lined up going into 2026, specifically for SHOT Show as well, to try and help tell the company's story, the things that I've heard from people that matter, right? The end user that got benefit by, this company went out of their way to do these things. And that might sound a little bit not entertaining, but some of these stories to me were like they were super important, and I think people need to hear that stuff. And there's also business aspect to that. So for people like you guys that do the things that you do and are having a business, talking to some of these people in these companies, I think can provide a lot of value to the listeners that own companies or are in leadership positions and are trying to navigate through organizational management. So you'll probably see a little bit more of that in 2026 on the Iron Sights podcast. And I think, longer term, like I want to continue to do this. I will say this, I'll be very open about this. The podcast is, sometimes like it breaks even, but most of the time I don't make any money doing this. I would like to partner with some select people to help promote the message that you guys are promoting right now, which is training and leaving the world a better place. And yes, there are products attached to that, but what are those products and who are they talking to and how are they helping people? Going back to the story behind the company. I think there are some people that I like to partner with. So I'm open to that for people that are out there. I'm not going to, you mentioned a show before. I'm not going to get into taking a check from everybody that wants to promote their mattresses, their diarrhea teas, they're this and whatever. I'm just not doing that. I could have done that a ton along the way.
I'm sure.
So you may start hearing some things that are a little different on Iron Sights in the future with regard to that. I got some things in the works that I'm pretty excited about, like good people, and it starts there, that I think have good companies. And you might not buy their product and you might not agree with me, but if you know anything about me, I wouldn't do that if I didn't feel strongly about it. So I think you'll see a little bit of that going forward. I don't know if that totally answers the question.
No, that's excellent because I've talked way too much today. One of the things I think is fascinating that you addressed is that the people who take a selfie of themselves giving a homeless person $20 and a sandwich is not somebody I want to do anything for. It's like, you've got your reward. Yes, look at you. You're so charitable. The people I want to do business with are the people who wouldn't do that. But then how do we know that they're the companies that do that? It's like, I like to help people. I do a lot of things I don't talk about because it's nobody's business. It's between me and God and that person I helped. And that person, if I'm going to advertise, look what I did for these people and look how amazing I am, I'm not doing it for that person who needs the help. I'm doing it for my own ego and for my own promotion.
Yep.
So I'm not going to talk about what I do. The fact that you're looking for people like that, you're going to find a lot of dudes and a lot of companies who are going to be embarrassed talking about that. It's like, well, I'm not doing it for that reason, but I want to work with people like that. I want to find the companies who are donating their material or providing apprenticeships or hiring people who normally wouldn't be hired, that kind of stuff. Those are the people I want to work with. Those are the people I want to support. I don't want to send something, I don't want to spend money on Chinesium stuff. I want to find out who in America is building this stuff. But then I want to find the people who are in America building this stuff because I want to help my community, not because I want to buy a new Porsche or a new Rolex or, take pictures of myself in Cancun, that kind of stuff. So I really love that take. I think that's a brilliant take. And I think it's going to be challenging because the humble companies doing the good work aren't going to be reaching out to you saying, hey, look at all our good work, promote me.
That's just it. So I learned a lot in 2025 because I attempted this process at this time last year. I was like, okay, we're going to try and leverage the brands a little bit to help other brands. And what I learned was a lot. I learned a lot in a lot of conversations with a lot of people at a lot of companies at a lot of different levels. And I thought I knew some things, and I recognized how much I didn't know. And I also recognized how much they didn't know about a lot of things, like the podcast game and things like that. But here's what I know, and here's what would be the purpose of doing that. Not so I can drive a Porsche, not interested in that. I drive a 2007 Chevy, pickup. That's what I drive,
yeah.
right?
2016 Impala.
Right? Like I buy one thing, I have a couple of things, I don't have a lot of toys, I don't have a lot of stuff, right? That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is, so I will tell you this, Iron Sights has a capability to do way beyond what it's doing with regard to like how we put out content and the type of content we could create with other people. But that takes money. It takes capital, right? It takes bandwidth. And, again, I make my money in the gym, right? That's where my money comes from. And that means I've got to be busy doing that and keep my finger on the pulse and keep the people here supported and happy and all those kind of things. So in order for me to leverage the capability that we have to help companies help people, or help guys like you help people, people have to come to the table. I need partnership there. I don't have that money. I don't have deep pockets to be drawing from. I've invested tens of thousands of dollars into the Iron Sights podcast. I am way in the red, too far in the red. If I had a business, like if I hired somebody to come in and out of my business, the first thing that would get cut would be the Iron Sights podcast. They would look at this and go, "What in the hell are you doing?" Like if I tried to sell this company, like they'd be like, "Absolutely not, dude. This is ridiculous. How stupid are you?" That's literally what they would say. I know, because I've audited businesses. It's what I did for a long time, right? But I've invested a lot, and all I'm looking to do is invest more. I just don't have a lot more of my money that I can invest in it. So I think there's a lot of capability there, and I would love to work with people to expose people to more of the kinds of things that you do in training companies and products and things like that truly help people do the jobs that they need to do to protect the people like me, service my community, bring revenue to the communities, connect people within the communities and things like that. It can be done correctly. I've just been painfully trying to figure out the best way to do it. And I think we're right about there. So
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome to hear.
Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, you want me to hit my question?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So I got one last question for you, and I'll start with this. And I didn't know that story about you were almost going to be done podcasting.
Mhm.
And it kind of speaks to what I was going to ask you, which is like most people don't see what goes on behind the scenes.
Mm.
And they also don't see like all the bad days and like how many of those bad days or days in the red that it takes to get some version of success. And so we talked about measuring success, and I think this is instrumental in like how we all came together and everything. So I wanted to say like my piece on this, which would be just if you're a trainer or if you're a podcaster or a shooter or whatever, like success is incremental. And I think far too often people think that I'm going to do the thing and then tomorrow it's going to be amazing. And it's not the case. And that incremental time period could be a week or a year or decades, right?
Mhm.
And especially for in like the fitness industry, someone's like, "Hey, I want to back squat 505." It's like, okay, well, you can't walk right now, so let's start with the baby steps, right?
Got work to do.
So measuring success is incremental. And the common, analogy that people will say is the recipe for that is just consistency over time
Mm.
equals results, right? And I think, a way to measure success, at least with what you've done and everything, is not only getting the reassurance from your people, but would be that if those results yield a positive influence and success of friends and others and develop appreciation by, like, say, your constituents or your viewers, like to me, that sounds like I don't think it gets better than that as far as people sending you those messages and stuff. And it also tailors to like as a coach or an instructor. If you have people coming up to you saying like, "Hey, dude, like that was an awesome workout. I really like this program." Like for me, when I teach and you get the people after class that come up to you and are like, "Hey, I've been in this for 20 years. Like that was great." Like that's a huge win for me. So I can't imagine how that must feel for you, especially when you were seeing it like at your low point, and then you get this influx of people like, "Dude, this is awesome." So I just wanted to say that, and then which leads me to my actual question. So that was my appreciation for you and what you've done and everything bringing all of us together. But the question is, what lessons have you learned that consistently apply across all the spectrums that you do with like coaching, shooting, training, podcasting, all the disciplines, and have contributed to your success in each? Is there like a common denominator that you found as far as success in your life?
I think we've touched on a few of those points. Is like maintain your integrity, because you own that, and then and if you're not doing that, there's probably, everybody could probably look back at their life and know at least one point where they compromised that and how much that hurt them and what a disaster that can be. But that's certainly like a platform to be working from, right? And I think that means different things to different people. Sometimes they can turn it on and turn it off. I'm not wired that way, so I don't know. But I think in terms of skills, that are acquired and the things that are common denominators is one, I don't think, and I don't think people value relationships enough. I think that the relationship piece is absolutely critical to us being humans and us being successful in all of those things. That it is by our nature, like we are a relationship being, right? Like there are things that we get from those things and give to those things, and they're equally important. So building relationships has definitely been a massive key to anything that I've been able to accomplish in my life. And I will say this, I've done none of it by myself, right? Again, going back to the behind the scenes, like none of this happens in a vacuum by myself, right? It's the guests, right, that are on the show. It's the audience that listens to it. There's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes to make one of these things happen. It's gotten easier, right, in terms of technology and things like that, I think for folks, but yeah, that doesn't happen without solid relationships. And so that, and I think the next thing that comes, that comes after relationships is you're not going to have those if you cannot communicate. And I think communication is a broad term, but communication means asking questions. And the two most important skills I think you'll learn within communication, these are the two skills that have carried me the furthest and I can equate to any client that I've ever picked up, any strong relationships that I've ever had, and and any dollar that I've ever made in the fitness industry is learning how to question skillfully and listen carefully. And what I mean by that is like that goes back to the podcast and just kind of how I operate. Like, look, ask meaningful questions, be engaged, right? Don't ask questions that don't matter. Like, and if you've asked a question, you recognize that, I mean, this may be a little bit irrelevant. All right, well, take that and how do you make it more relevant, kind of thing. And then the listening skills are, don't don't ask a question expecting obviously your answer or what you have in your mind or your belief system to come out of somebody else's mouth, right? Like, listen to what they're saying and then ask the next question. Like, why? Like, okay, I'm curious. Like, I'm genuinely curious. Like, why do you think that? Why do you believe that? I assume if you can't do that on the street as a police officer, you're not going to be very successful at actually helping people, which I believe most police officers got into the job, right, to do that very thing. So I think the communication skill is extraordinarily important. And it's not just about talking, it's about listening. Right. And it's really weird being on this end of the spectrum or on this end of the table for me to where you're asking me to talk, because I could do that all day long, right? But I have so many questions for you guys still about the things that you're doing and what you're currently doing now, because I'm genuinely curious. So just going back, like, question skillfully, listen carefully. You can take that skill into anything that you do in life, right? Whether that's in business, fitness, firearms, combatives, training, your life and your work as a police officer, your life in leadership, and if you get really good at that stuff, you start to recognize how important that stuff is, rather than just being told all the time what to do, or constantly listening with already in your head like what this should be or what I think it already is, and it doesn't matter what this person says or answers my question. Then why are we even freaking talking? Like, why are we even having this conversation? So it's not a conversation, right? It isn't. So yeah, I think those skills go across the board. And the last thing I would say is, like, you have to care. Like, if you don't care, um, if you don't care, then this is very short-lived. There has to be a deep rooted reason why you're doing what you're doing. So whether you're a cop, you're a firearms instructor, right? You're a gym owner, you're a personal trainer, anything like that. There has to be a care. You guys, everybody's heard this one before. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. That might sound corny, cheesy, and whatever, but it's true.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
absolutely true,
100%.
especially if you're trying to help somebody, right? If you're not and you don't care, well, then keep doing that, and hopefully that works out for you. But, like, you're not going to be on this show, right? And You know,
A million
you're not going to
hours.
be on my show. You're probably not going to get introduced to my friends, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to connect you with people. So those are my top three, man.
That's awesome,
That's
man.
awesome.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
was not expecting you to say that. That's good. I wrote it down.
Very good. So I think, do you have any follow-up, Bill?
No, that he crushed
Okay.
it.
All right. The final question we already warned you about, giving you time to think about. Who would be your dream guest? Who would you wake up in the morning and saw a text saying, "I'm going to be on your show"? You just be giddy like a schoolgirl.
Um, I told you this when you guys told me you were going to ask this
Yeah.
question. It's the hardest question you could ask me. I'll tell you this. I'll preface it with this. There is nobody that I worship. There's no man, there's no human on the planet that I worship that I would be like, I gotta have this person on the show. This would be the highlight of my life, or this would make the show. I've never approached it like that, and um, so I will also say this, like the most, again, going back to what I was saying before, some of the most impactful conversations that I've had are some of the least expected ones I thought I would have. And I really enjoy that. And I really want to maintain that. There are certainly people also going back to what I said, like there's nobody that I want to have the show because I think it would absolutely change the world for somebody else. Right. Um, or change, and particularly me, like it's that have that kind of impact on me. I think honestly there's a lot of huge names out there and people that are doing a really great job that I've had the opportunity or could have the opportunity to potentially have on the show, but I feel like they've already done that. Like they've already
Yeah.
done that and people can get that somewhere else. Or they've already told the same story and given the same lessons or whatever the thing is already so many times. And I'm not interested in regurgitating a conversation. And I tried never to do that. Sometimes I have to have people kind of give people an update on who they are and where they're from, just out of respect for the audience, because they might not know who they are. I think this would be more of like if you'd qualify this with like living or dead. um, uh, I would say I would go back. I'd die to have one of my grandfathers on that I never knew.
Hmm.
To have those conversations about my folks, or their background and stuff like that. Like that'd be cool. I'd be into
Yeah.
that. But as far as like living, man, there's nobody I'm out there like chasing. I've never chased anybody. I'm not gonna do that. um I'm fortunate at this point when I do reach out to the people that I really want to talk to, I almost always get a yes. um and I feel that's all due to the audience and the previous guests that I've had, and earning trust and trying to maintain that trust. I have some really great ones coming up. I've had bucket list people. I definitely have bucket list people. Um, and I'm having some of those people on. I'll give you an example. One of the people I'm having on who's been on my bucket list for a very long time is Chuck Pressburg. Um,
Okay.
Finally nailed him down for SHOT Show this year. I've just had so many questions for him. I've heard him talk. I've actually spoken to him in person before briefly. He's very intriguing to me. Um, Again, I don't worship Chuck, but I think there's so many questions I have for Chuck, like as an example. So I just dropped that name as I'm trying to tick people off the bucket list, and I've been super fortunate that I've been able to do that. And every time I add some, or every time I knock somebody off, somebody new pops on, and that's just been my process.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have like an agenda of like I got to have this person on to do this thing. It just kind of happens organically, just like the podcast has, and
Yeah.
I kind of enjoy keeping it that way. That said, if the audience out there is like, you got to have this person on, I hear that a lot, or I get that a lot in my DMs, but I'll say this: if you're going to suggest somebody, I'm always going to ask the question why. So please develop that answer and give it to me so that I can consider it at the level that makes sense, not just because somebody thinks they're a god or whatever else, or that they're really cool. Like, cool, to your point, Rick, like what value can this person provide? Like,
Yeah.
and tell me what that is. Tell me what you think that is, because if it's interesting to you, then I want to help with that. But at the same time, like, I mean, there's people out there with millions of followers and things like that, and whatever, that do a really good job of what they do. But man, the reason they have a million followers is because they're already out there, and I can probably find out everything I need to know, or I
Yeah.
wanted to know, by listening to their content and watching their content. That's why I choose people that are kind of obscure sometimes is because there's not a lot and I have questions and let's ask them, kind of thing. But a lot of times those bigger people out there are, they've already put all that stuff up. They've written a book, right? They do webinars, they have podcasts already and whatever else. I'm
Speaking
like, oh,
engagements.
I could kind of get that information already. So there's no sense in us sitting down and talking about it, me spending money on it, right? It's free.
Good point. Yeah.
I think you answered it previously when you said that you're not putting people on your podcast for your sake. You're not putting them on there because you're trying to get more followers or you're trying to balance off of their name or something like that. So when you talked about that, and I was still thinking about asking this question, it became even more intriguing. What would his response be? Because clearly you're not looking for people to satiate your own ego. You're not looking for people who are going to launch Iron Sights podcast. You've already got the followers who respect you, and there's people who are discovering you every day. So I think that I really liked your answer. It's kind of like how we're looking at it too, is that I don't think there's anyone that I like wake up in the morning thinking, I got to have this guy on. He's going to, if anything, it's like, I saw him say this in one of his things, and I want to know more about why he believes that. Or I saw this guy post something that I thought was really interesting that I hadn't thought about in adding to my training. It's like, or he had a really good point about why I'm wrong, and I want him to talk about more about why I'm wrong, so that I can understand better how to be right. So it's going to be interesting if we interview other podcasters, what their answers will be. Hopefully they'll do some research and see this and see that it might be a loaded question.
Hey, listen, man, I get that there's folks out there that are like they're really enamored by certain things and certain people and whatever, and they want to do that. I think that's great. That just isn't how I got started, particularly in this in this genre, right? Of the space. Like again, it goes back to what you just said there, man. It's like, hey, that person said something that really stuck with me. Like that completely challenges everything that I've been taught or everything I think I know at this point. I got questions. I'm going to DM this dude, or I'm going to try to make a connection through somebody else that I know and find out like a question about that. And what I was, again, I'll repeat, what I was surprised to find out is how willing they were to have the conversation with me. I'm a nobody. Like I know nothing. I haven't done what this guy's done, or I don't know half of what this dude knows or a fraction of it. But I think if I question skillfully and I listen carefully, like I might be in a position to have a conversation, and that's exactly what happened. And so that's how these podcasts go. So you nailed it, dude. It's like you're out there like I'm just curious, man. Like I am just, and it's more than curiosity. It's like I'm curious so that it can be shared, not curious so that I can internalize it and not put it out there. I think I hear guys say this a lot, like instructors and coaches, like, does me no good to take this information to the grave. Right. Like, what fulfills me and what I get a kick out of, and what I get, again, fulfillment from is like when other people say that was important for them. Good. I just won, that's a win for me, checking the win column.
Absolutely. Well, man, Scott, we are so freaking grateful for having you on. This has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I miss talking to you too, man. I probably DM you far more than you're like, oh my God, that guy's DMing me again. But
it's all good, man.
It's like, hey, I got this idea, Scott. And then like 2 days later, I've been working on this for a year or something like that. So we're really grateful for the time you give us. We respect the heck out of you. We enjoy the humility. You bring on great people and ask great questions. So thank you for taking the time out with us, because we're the little nobodies now, and you're the great podcaster that we respect and want to emulate.
That's so weird. That's so weird. Like to have somebody say that to me, it still feels weird. It doesn't feel right, but I do appreciate the sentiment. And to that point, like, thank you for trusting me enough to be on the show in the first place. Right.
Oh, absolutely.
And have those conversations, and for inviting me back. Like, again, I don't sit on this end very often. I don't get invited to a lot of shows. It's not something I feel bad about, or I'm wondering why. It's just like I don't get the opportunity to be on this side of the table and have, have people ask me questions about my thoughts on stuff. I try to share those sometimes, and sometimes I get terrible feedback for it. Like, you talk too much. I'm like, well, dude, I got this dude in front of me who I've been waiting a year to talk to. Like, I have some thoughts. Sometimes I have to put my thoughts out to develop the question, right? To give some context to the question I'm about to ask so we get a deeper level answer. Sorry, bro. Like, it's my
Yeah.
show. Can I at least maybe say stuff? So it's cool to be on the other side of the table and be asked questions, and I know where it's coming from. I know where the questions are coming from in terms of, from a deeper level. I appreciate what you guys are doing. I congratulate you on taking on the challenge of what you're doing. I know how much work this is. I know this is a labor of love, right? Again, that's what the podcast and the fitness business has been for me. One of the things I didn't mention earlier is I think like the most important positions that exist out there, particularly for law enforcement officers, are the ones where you have the opportunity to impact the other law enforcement officers, and they're
Yeah.
often not paid enough. They are not thanked enough, right? Can be a very thankless position. And then you have this group of students or whatever that are in front of you for a bit, and then they move on, and then you get the next batch, right? And then it's up to somebody else to take them, including themselves, to the next level. And I worked with athletes for a long time, and that was how it was. Like, you get them for a short time, they're successful kind of at the thing, and then they move on, right? The clients that I love and the people that I love working with the most, like the audience, is the ones that come back and they're constantly growing and they're constantly, achieving little things at a time. They stick around for the long term. And so what you guys are doing in terms of building that for yourselves, and the challenges you guys have already taken on for the time that it took you to get to even this place, to the constantly building materials, constantly putting that stuff out on the internet, constantly putting on social media, when you're like, dude, like, is anybody even seeing this? Like, is
Mhm.
anybody even listening to this message? People are listening. I freaking listen to it every time, right? I'm
Yeah.
listening to it every time. So you got a fan in me. I was happy to be here. Anything I can do to help you guys, I'm here to do it. Like I said, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm looking forward to meeting back up with you guys in a couple weeks.
Yeah. That'll be good. That'll be awesome. Hopefully we'll have a lot of questions for you too. So
Yeah, well, when I come on, and my eyes might be big, and I might be on a lot of nicotine and a lot of caffeine when I get there, because I will have been at SHOT Show for a whole week, which is a nightmare.
yeah.
It's very rewarding, but it's also a nightmare. And I'll be just finishing up with that interview I mentioned with Chuck, so I'll have to be jumping right in. So be patient with me when I get there. If I look like I'm all methed out, it's probably because of that.
Awesome, man. We've been warned. Thank you.
All right,
You
guys.
anything you got to say, Bill?
No, man, just thank you so much for coming on. When we first talked about, like, me, Jamie, and Rick talked about, like, hey, who we can have on? It was like a unanimous we gotta have Scott, because he's the common denominator into this. So thank you for not only coming on, but like for your continued support, like behind the scenes. Like, you talk to all of us like pretty frequently. So thank you for that. It means a lot, and I can't wait to see what the Iron Sights has got in store for this year. So.
Thanks, buddy. Like I said, I'm honored to be here, and I appreciate the relationship and the time and the knowledge that you've given me, and for just being there sometimes to send stupid memes or whatever else that happens in the back end. But I appreciate you, dude. Thank you.
Thanks,
All
buddy.
right, man. Thanks. Have a good night and enjoy SHOT Show.
Will do.
All
Thanks.
right.
Later, bro.
Bye.